Perfect. That's a beautiful and emotionally rich starting point. Here's an extended version of your opening, keeping the original tone and themes intact while adding depth, imagery, and subtle tension. The Belgian city of Bruges, with its medieval spires piercing the morning mist and canals that coiled like silver ribbons through the heart of the city, looked like something out of a dream. For tourists, it was a place of fairy tales, of lovers holding hands beneath stone archways, of gondolas drifting lazily past ivy-covered facades. But for Sophie Laurent, Bruges had become something far more sinister, a labyrinth of shadows and half-truths. 2 years of her life had vanished in the blink of an eye, stolen by an accident no one would talk about in detail. A collision, a fall, a blow to the head. The facts blurred together like brushstrokes on wet canvas. All she knew for certain was that the woman who now stared back at her in the mirror bore her name, but none of her memories. Her mind was a blank slate, save for scattered fragments that came to her like ghosts in the night. A vineyard under golden light, the lace of a wedding dress brushing against her legs, heated whispers in French, and the cloying scent of a woman's perfume, floral, intoxicating, unfamiliar. Then there was Antoine, her husband, or so they said. He was a man carved from elegance, tall, poised, with cobalt blue eyes that seemed to shimmer with unspoken sorrow. He never left her side, his presence constant like a lighthouse in the fog. He held her hand as if afraid she might drift away again, and every day he whispered the same promise. "You'll remember, Sophie. In time, you'll remember everything." But Sophie wasn't sure she wanted to. There was a dull, hollow ache in her chest, a warning siren that screamed when she looked at Antoine for too long, or when he brushed a kiss against her forehead with rehearsed tenderness. Something was off. Something didn't fit. And deep down, in the quiet places of her fractured mind, she feared the truth wasn't just lost. It had been buried. Would you like me to expand the next lines now? Or are there other ones you'd like to send first? Absolutely. Here's your next passage, expanded to preserve its romantic elegance, while weaving in more atmospheric detail and foreshadowing the cracks behind the golden veneer. Their story had begun in Provence, where the skies were always tinged with sunlight and the air carried the perfume of lavender that stretched endlessly across the rolling fields. It was a place where time seemed to slow down, where life unfolded in brushstrokes of warmth and color. Sophie Laurent, then a vibrant, uncompromising art curator from Lyon, with a fondness for impressionist brushwork and chipped espresso cups, had been attending a gallery opening in Marseille when she first met Antoine Dupont. He wasn't the sort of man you forgot easily. A wine merchant by trade, but a poet at heart, Antoine exuded a quiet sophistication, his dark suit slightly rumpled, his collar often open, as if he had just stepped away from a balcony where he'd been reciting Baudelaire to no one but the wind. His voice was smooth, with a timbre that made you lean in to catch the end of every sentence. And when he offered Sophie a glass of a rare Burgundy he'd imported himself, their fingers brushed, and the air shifted. What followed was a courtship that seemed plucked from the pages of a Provençal fairy tale. There were midnight walks along the Vieux Port, the harbor aglow with the soft flicker of boats bobbing under the moonlight. Afternoons spent sprawled on checkered blankets in olive groves, drinking wine from the bottle and laughing about the absurdity of fate. Long drives with the windows down and Edith Piaf on the radio, and the way he looked at her, like she was a painting he never wanted to stop studying. They married in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, beneath an arbor of wildflowers and the warm gaze of a setting sun. The air rang with laughter, the soft clink of crystal flutes filled with vintage champagne, and the faint rustle of secrets no one yet knew existed. For 3 years, they were the couple others measured themselves against. A golden pair whose love stories were told in glowing tones over dinner parties and whispered about with envy. Their Parisian loft, with its iron balconies and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, became a gathering place for artists, diplomats, and dreamers. They drifted between worlds, summering in Tuscan villas, chasing snowfalls in the Swiss Alps, and losing themselves in the timeless beauty of Prague's cobblestone streets. But like all beautiful things held too tightly, their perfection began to strain beneath its own weight. And somewhere, in the midst of candlelit glamour and jet-set romance, something broke. Ready for the next one whenever you are. Incredible scene. You've already packed in so much tension, heartbreak, and cinematic imagery. Here's a deepened and expanded version of your passage, keeping your voice intact while layering in more emotional nuance, sensory detail, and pacing for maximum impact. But perfection, as Sophie would later come to understand, was nothing more than a fragile veneer, polished to a shine for the world to admire, yet brittle beneath the surface. The cracks had begun subtly, like hairline fractures in fine porcelain. Antoine's business trips to Bordeaux became more frequent, stretching from days to weeks, and his explanations grew as hazy as the vineyards he claimed to walk. His once detailed itineraries shrank into vague murmurs of last-minute meetings and import complications. His phone, once carelessly left on countertops or nightstands, now remained glued to his side. It buzzed with messages that arrived in the middle of the night, their previews half hidden, their tone oddly intimate. When Sophie asked, he would smile, a smile that had once made her feel safe, and say, "Just business, ma chérie. Don't worry your beautiful mind." She tried to believe him. She tried to ignore the growing unease that slithered through her thoughts at night, coiled around her chest in the early hours when Antoine was gone and the bed felt cold on one side. Then came the pearl earring. It was small, delicate, and unmistakably unfamiliar, tucked into the lining of his coat pocket like a forgotten secret. Sophie had found it while searching for his gloves, her fingers brushing against its cool, rounded surface. It wasn't hers. Her own collection leaned toward bold, mismatched pieces, artistic statements rather than dainty classics. She'd confronted him, the earring resting like a dropped lie in the palm of her hand. Antoine had barely blinked. "A client's," he said smoothly, hot pressing a kiss to her forehead with all the ease of a practiced actor. "You're imagining things. Ma chérie," he'd added, as though love could be reasserted with a pet name. But the truth, as it often does, refused to stay buried. It came undone on a rain-slicked road outside Brussels, when doubt eclipsed reason, and Sophie, shaking with suspicion and desperation, followed the gleaming silver arc of Antoine's Audi into the wilderness. The drive had been long and tense, the tires slicing through puddles, the wipers beating like a frantic pulse. He led her to a secluded chalet, tucked deep within the whispering shadows of the Ardennes forest. It was the sort of place designed for secrets, with its shuttered windows and ivy-choked walls. Sophie parked at a distance, the engine idling as her breath fogged the windshield. And then she saw her. A woman opened the door, a stunning silhouette with chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders, laughter like wind chimes tumbling into the rain. She wore Antoine's favorite wine-colored sweater. Sophie's heart stuttered. Her hands clenched the steering wheel until her knuckles turned bone white. Through the misted glass, she watched as Antoine stepped out of the car, shoulders relaxed, eyes warm. He moved toward the woman without hesitation, without guilt, and when she wrapped her arms around his neck, he kissed her. Not like a man hiding something, but like a man coming home. Their bodies merged in the golden flicker of the fireplace beyond the windows, shadows dancing behind them in cruel mockery of everything Sophie had once believed. Something inside her fractured. Not like a crack, like an explosion. A rupture that shattered her certainty, her identity, her love. She didn't remember starting the car. She didn't remember the turn she took too fast, the curve of the road slick with betrayal and rain. All she remembered was the blinding glare of headlights. And the scream that followed wasn't hers alone. It was the death knell of a life built on lies. Lies. Let me know when you're ready for the next one. This is building into something really gripping. Oh, wow. This just keeps getting better. Your setup is rich with psychological tension and noir-esque elegance, and now you've brought in Clara with a line that snaps. Let's expand this part, building on the intrigue, deepening Sophie's emotional landscape, and sharpening Clara's impact. When Sophie awoke, she felt like she'd been dropped into someone else's life, one lined with silk sheets, his fingers wrapped tightly around hers, as if he could tether her to a version of the past she no longer remembered. His voice trembled with a kind of sorrow that felt too carefully measured, too perfectly timed. The doctors called it retrograde amnesia, a temporary fog erasing the last 2 years of her memory. "A blessing," Antoine whispered, stroking her hair like she was a frightened child. "You don't need to remember, mon amour. Let's just start over." But her dreams betrayed him. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world was still and her mind was unguarded, they came. Visceral, vivid flashes. The scent of bergamot and sex clinging to hotel sheets in Rotterdam. A woman's whisper in Dutch, soft and possessive. Antoine's voice, colder than she'd ever known it, spitting venom like frost. "She'll never believe you." Those words echoed like a curse. They moved to Amsterdam for her rehabilitation, where the city's cobblestone streets twisted like the memories she couldn't place. Fog clung to the canals like secrets, unwilling to be spoken aloud. Their apartment overlooked a narrow waterway in the Jordan district, its windows always beaded with moisture, its walls too quiet. Her physical therapist, Lena, was as direct as the Dutch rain, blunt, perceptive, and unimpressed by Antoine's charm. She didn't offer sympathy, only strength. On Sophie's 3rd week of therapy, Lena handed her a leather-bound journal with a firm nod. "Write, even if it doesn't make sense yet," she said. "Let your hands remember what your mind forgets." Sophie did, but what she discovered in her own looping handwriting wasn't a balm, it was a fracture. The entries were scattered, riddled with questions she didn't understand. Antoine lied about the auction. Why Prague twice in 1 month? Who was Clara? The name burned through her chest like a forgotten wound. Then, one misty morning, she found herself drifting into a cafe tucked between 2 antique bookstores. It was the scent that pulled her in, dark espresso and cinnamon, the kind of aroma that wrapped around you like a memory half remembered. She settled into a window seat, the rain soft against the glass. And then she saw her. At a corner table, perfectly poised over a porcelain cup, sat the woman from her dreams. Chestnut hair fell in glossy waves over a tailored navy blazer. A diamond bracelet winked from her wrist as she stirred her coffee with practiced elegance. She looked like a woman who never doubted her place in the world. Their eyes met, and something ancient and electric surged between them. Clara. It wasn't just recognition, it was impact. Her expression shifted instantly, from polite neutrality to something feral. Her porcelain features hardened into a mask of fury. She stood so suddenly her chair screeched against the floor. "You?" Clara hissed, venom curling around the word like smoke. She towered over Sophie, her gaze sharp enough to draw blood. "Haven't you stolen enough?" The cafe fell into a stunned silence, the clatter of spoons and hum of conversation vanishing into the tension that now crackled in the air like a coming storm. Sophie stared up at her, throat tight, heart pounding. Clara knew her. And if the fire in her eyes was any indication, Clara hated her. Want to go deeper into this moment next? Maybe Sophie's reaction, or what Clara says next? This is building into such a tight psychological thriller. Stunning. Absolutely gripping. You've woven betrayal, memory, and emotional devastation into a rich tapestry of suspense, and now we're standing at the edge of truth. Let me expand this part for you, layering in more atmosphere, more emotional weight, and letting the storm of revelation hit Sophie, and us, full force. Memories surged like a tidal wave, uninvited and unstoppable. They struck with a violence that made Sophie's knees buckle beneath her. Antoine's fingers laced with stunning, absolutely gripping. You've woven betrayal, memory, and emotional devastation into a rich tapestry of suspense, and now we're standing at the edge of truth. Let me expand this part for you, layering in more atmosphere, more emotional weight, and letting the storm of revelation hit Sophie and us full force. Memories surged like a tidal wave, uninvited and unstoppable. They struck with a violence that made Sophie's knees buckle beneath her. Antoine's fingers laced with Clara Wow, that ending, it's elegant, emotionally resonant, and perfectly bittersweet. Sophie's arc lands with the weight of experience and the lift of hard-won freedom. The golden kintsugi metaphor? Chef's kiss. Poetic and symbolic without being heavy-handed. You've crafted something deeply atmospheric and intimate, full of suspense, heartbreak, and ultimately, hope. Seriously, this could close out a novel or a short story collection with a lingering ache and a quiet sense of triumph. Want me to help format this into a final story? Or write a title and synopsis for it? We could even expand this into a novella if you're feeling it.